Kia ora no, I'm Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here talking about well-being and activism. And today I wanted to talk about my experiences realizing that I'm an empath and what that means for my activism, and asking the question, is this something that resonates with you? Some of you will be like, oh yeah, I already knew that. Others will be, others will be like, what are you talking about? And then there'll be some that, that maybe this actually does connect to your experience, but it hasn't been something you've thought about. So it's something that I've been slowly learning over the years. And so I'm still just partway on my journey with working with that idea. So I'm just kind of in the middle. So I hope that this, sparks some conversations and resonates with some people out there. If this doesn't resonate with you, you might want to click away now. That's fair enough. Or you might just be interested to watch it and see what other people you might be working alongside experience. I assume that there will be lots of people in our movements who are empaths, because empaths are basically people who are highly sensitive to other people, and sometimes animals and plants as well, highly sensitive to the emotions of others, and have a tendency to feel those emotions in our own bodies, sometimes with some confusion as though those are our own. I think that a lot of us who are attracted to activism are likely to be empaths, because that sensitivity to the pain that happens in the world can be hugely motivating to want to be part of the change that lessens some of that pain. So I think that a lot of us in our movements are empaths whether we know it or not, and that is a wonderful ability, and it can also be something that can be really overwhelming and can lead to a lot of exhaustion and a lot of burnout. So it's something I think that's really worth knowing about, and sort of taking an active kind of role in managing. And I just hope to share some reflections with you today. I'm also excited to do this video because it is a response video to one that Kellyanne Maddox put out a little while ago about staying strong while sensitive. And I'm not really, being new to YouTube, I'm not really sure the etiquette of response videos. I don't know if they're supposed to be quite soon after. This is not very soon after. But her video that she put out about this is one of the things that really sparked me to make this channel, actually, and kind of get back into the fray of activism. So I really want to direct you to that video. And also, if you see this, Kellyanne, thank you for that, because it really shook me up. It got me going again. So depending on how much sense I'm making, you might want to check out Kellyanne's video first and then come back to this one. Hopefully I make enough sense that you can watch them in whichever order. But like I say, I'll link it below, as well as a few other resources. And Kelly, I won't try to just repeat everything that Kellyanne says. I think you need to just watch her video. But the main kind of challenge that she's putting out there is that people who do consider themselves empaths and have sort of gone out there looking for information about how to be in the world as an empath, a lot of that information out there is quite focused on how hard it is and how overwhelming it is. And she's putting the challenge out there to flip that a little bit and see it as a superpower. Just work on lessening the overwhelm, but also work on growing what's beautiful about that as well. And she asked if there are people who, used to feel like it was a really difficult thing about their life and now see it as a really wonderful thing about their life. This response video is not quite there. Like I say, I'm kind of in the middle of this journey, and what she had to say, especially about actively protecting yourself as you go out in the world. I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the video. That really was an eye-opener to me that made me go, oh yes, this is something that I'm just at the beginning of working out how to do that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. I'm going to share some experiences of how I sort of realized that this is a thing for me, in case they click with you and you can go, oh yeah, that happens to me too. Maybe I should think about this. And I'll talk a little bit about, how these things can affect our activism. And then, a little bit about what you can do proactively about it. Where do you begin with something like this? I think that empaths, it's an innate experience. Some people are just more sensitive to other people's emotions than others, just like some people are less sensitive to other people's emotions. And so I think that has been with me since I was a small child. But I've kind of, this really gets into the kind of spiritual, woo-woo, witchy kind of side of things that I've kind of dabbled with on and off since I was a teenager. And like I say, I've kind of dipped into that stuff, but I didn't really recognize it. I didn't really give it credit, and really feel like fully integrate it as a solid thing in my life, until a few years ago when I was working in a workplace that was really stressful, and we had a lot of very stressful meetings in our actual office, where people would come, often from out of town, and bring all of their stress and have these intense meetings and then go away afterwards, and we would kind of be left with the vibe in our office and the impacts of that. And that wasn't something that I necessarily consciously credited as something that was happening, until I realized that the other people around me in my office, and some of the other people who came into our office occasionally, were noticing it and were recognizing it and were responding to it in very simple, practical ways to clear that energy that was in the room. And when I say energy, I just mean, people's emotional stuff. If you're not at all woo-woo, it might sound really weird that that stuff can stay in a room. But I guess what I'm saying is that over time I've come to accept that it does, and I feel it. During the time in that office, I would go in there and I would think, oh, yuck, it feels awful. But I'd think, oh, well, I'm just remembering that yucky meeting over the last week or whatever. But then when other people would come in and notice as well, I started to recognize that there was something more to it. And like I say, my colleagues were very good at just running the vacuum cleaner, burning some incense, getting that stuff cleared out, clearing the white door of the space, so that we could get on with our jobs without that yuckiness. And so during that time, I really started clearing myself of other people's stuff seriously, and I started to realize how other people's stuff sticks to me, and start actively clearing that stuff. And another, doing things like trying to spend time in nature regularly, and having baths with some salt in it, things like that, burning incense, burning candles, things that just kind of clear the air, basically. And that stuff all really helped me. And during that time, somebody also said to me, this thing about taking on other people's emotions, this is maybe less woo-woo, but just in a pure empathy sense. Somebody else that I knew through that job, she ran sexual violence prevention workshops, and she said that she was talking to her co-facilitator about how she would always feel really exhausted after running a workshop, because she would feel all of the emotions of the people in the room responding to that quite heavy topic, and she was holding all of their emotions, and then she would feel really drained afterwards. And her co-facilitator was like, oh, that doesn't happen to me. I don't feel any of that during or after a workshop. And when she told me that, I was just like, what the fuck? What? people don't feel that, you know. That was one of those moments where I really realized that this is something very real for me that I need to be aware of and manage, and that it isn't something that everybody experiences. One of the things that Kellyanne talks about in her video is that often if we experience this kind of stuff, we can feel overwhelmed by it and end up using it as a reason not to engage in the stuff that we find meaningful, not to keep doing the work or going into particular spaces that we'd like to be in, because we just feel too tired and overwhelmed by other people's stuff. And that really kicked me in the guts, actually. I was, hanging out the laundry at the time, and when I was listening to her clip, I usually have my headphones in and, phone in the back pocket, listening to YouTube clips while I do chores. And I was hanging out the laundry shaking with how true that was for me, that I had been avoiding getting back involved in politics just because of the sheer dread at having to be in around all those personal politics again and feel other people's stuff so strongly. And I hadn't recognised that that's what it was, but when she said that, I was like, that is what it is. And that's why I say that seeing that clip from Kellyanne, and thank you, Kellyanne, genuinely for shaking me up in that way, that sparked me to want to get back into the fray and to start this YouTube channel and be really reflecting on some of this stuff, because she's right, we don't have to live a small life. We can actually take control of some of the stuff if we know what's happening. And so it makes me reflect on some of the ways that having that experience of being highly sensitive to other people's emotions can play out in activist scenes. And so, like I say, intense meetings, if you've got all of the tension in the room, you're feeling everybody's stress responses basically to what's happening with each other, and that can, be resonating really intensely in your own body. And if you don't know that it's actually other people's stuff that you're picking up on, it can feel like that's all you, that's all of your stress and neurosis and upset, when actually, in sense of shame or sense of competition or whatever it is, that is actually coming from the people around you. Meetings, whether it's in your workplace or your collective or whatever, where there's a lot of conflict, the exhaustion of feeling all of that. And I used to find that I would go home after those kind of meetings, whether it was, volunteer collectives or workplace ones. And because I was feeling all of this emotion and I was revved up by it, and I didn't know that it was just other people's emotional stuff that I needed to clear physically from my body, whether that's by sort of spiritual clearing, like I was talking about with the incense, or if it's about like what I talked about with the stress response cycle a few, on this channel recently, about actually like physically doing something to just let your body know that you're not in danger. Because I didn't know to do all of that stuff, I would obsessively problem solve. I would lie in bed at night trying to work out how to bridge the differences between people, like how can I understand this person and explain it to that person so that their stuff can ease. And there's some family dynamic stuff for me as well coming through in that role that I took on. But I think, again, part of it is just that empath response and not knowing what was happening and what I needed to do about it. And so therefore not being able to sleep and not being able to put down other people's stuff because I felt it in my body. So I think knowing about that stuff is really powerful. So meetings, let's think about some of the other spaces that we're in as activists too, like, again, running workshops. Usually as activists, even if we're bringing a real message of hope, we are often presenting information about harm that's happening or just distressing information to people a lot of the time. Sometimes, say if it's something like decolonization or feminist work, we might be actively challenging people to rearrange the way that they see the world. And whenever we have as humans, or just as animals, our view of the world challenged and shifted, that creates a natural stress response in our bodies, because we need to feel like we understand the way the world works. So anytime we bring people information that is unsettling like that, if we're an empath bringing that information to them, we're going to feel all of that discombobulation that the group's feeling, you know, and often on top of that, we're trying to like manage so hard our own response to that, and also manage the dynamics of the group so that people can feel okay and safe in that space. That's a lot of emotional work, right? So again, a lot that needs to sort of be cleared and taken care of. And again, if you don't realize that that's what it is, and you're just feeling exhausted and just going home and wanting to like watch Netflix all night or whatever, which far out, I did a lot of that. Yeah, there's stuff that isn't necessarily being cleared and attended to. Other things might be things like demos. Oh my God. Demos, like any kind of protests and stuff, I have to work really hard not to cry. Like there's the teenager in me who grew up in Taranaki, where you've got to be really staunch, is so ashamed to admit that, and I have to work so hard to not show it when I'm at demonstrations, but I just want to cry the whole time because I'm just overwhelmed by the intensity of emotion of all of these people. And it's not even a bad thing, it's kind of a beautiful thing. It always feels like so moving and glorious that all these people care so much. But again, that's just like a huge amount of emotional stuff in your body, right? And that wipes me out. I'm always exhausted after demos, and I kind of got put off going to them because I just feel too flattened afterwards. And not only that, but there's that happening, and then also like often at demos there'll be a bunch of different people who don't normally talk to each other anymore. Like they might have been in collectives together in the past, or they might have dated or whatever, and then they're suddenly all in the same space at the demo, and there's kind of the weird tensions of them coming in and out of the same space, or like it can be really intense. Yeah, and then even I was just thinking, like, even at like working bees and stuff, you know, there's personal dynamic stuff, even if it's stuff that's not like gross conflict, even if it's just like two people are really crushing on each other hard out or something, you know, and so there's a lot of kind of erotic tension in the room, can be really distracting. And yeah, there's so many ways I think that if you're sensitive to other people's emotional energy and you're not aware that it's outside of you, that can be really draining and confusing and stuff, as activists. So those are just some of the ways. I'll be really interested to hear other people if you've got ideas about the other ways that it can come into our activism. So I think all of these things just add up to it being tiring and draining, and if you're not aware of it and not knowing how to clear it, it can be a problem and wear you out over time. Also just watching, like, even when you're not in the room with people, like just watching like clips, you know, like I talked about in that one I did a while ago about caring for your ability to care. When you're exposed to a lot of films and Twitter feeds and all that sort of thing of people talking about harm that's happening, all of the physical emotional response that can happen in you, even from that, can be overwhelming as well. And I really noticed that recently. I was watching I'll link it below, but I was watching the stand-up comedy of Grace Leung, who's somebody that I know, and she's talking in it about when she was sexually assaulted and how she fought the guy off. And because I'd recently made that stress video and I was really tuning into my own stress during that month afterwards and trying to actively work my stress out of my body when I felt it, I really noticed that here I was again doing the dishes, and suddenly I wanted to fight this guy as well. Like my body was like, I'm going to beat the shit out of this guy. I'm so angry about it. And I had to stop doing the dishes and just dance it out in my lounge because my body was resonating so hard out with that. So, you know, that was just another reminder to me about the intensity of empathy and the way that we can feel things in our body as though we're under attack when it's actually somebody else who's been threatened, and just how direct and powerful that can be, even when we've just been exposed to it. through media rather than through somebody in a room with us sharing their experiences. So yeah, those are all of the ways that it could impact on our activism. There's probably more, but those are the ones I've been thinking about. So the other real challenge that Kellyanne put out there, which well, I don't know if this was her intention in the challenge, but it really bowled me over, was she talked about shielding. You know, taking responsibility for protecting yourself, your emotions and your energy, or whatever you want to think of it as, when you go into these kind of spaces that might have a lot of other people's emotional energy in. And when she said that, I was like, oh yeah, I haven't been doing that. Like I say, I started taking care of clearing stuff, but I hadn't been consciously putting up a sort of emotional, subconscious, psychological, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, barrier around myself to make sure that the stuff wasn't coming in as much. And in fact, I don't even know if I really had clicked that was something that I could do or I was allowed to do. That sounds dumb, but I think, again, family dynamic stuff, that feeling like a clear separation between myself and others was an option that I could really take charge of. And it's funny because, like I say, I've sort of looked at witchy stuff and spiritual stuff for years, and had a kind of a inconsistent practice with it, but done bits and pieces. And there's often this there's a lot of stuff in that space. And I guess what I'm saying with this video as well is, if you're resonating with some of these experiences but you're not at all interested in witchy stuff, that's fine, you don't have to be, but you might find that there's actually some real great tools there for this stuff. And so yeah, maybe check it out and take it any way you like. Like I think there is some kind of mystery behind all this stuff, but I also think even if there's not, like I've seen this stuff sort of described as embodied poetry, and I think that's a beautiful way to think about it, that our subconscious connects to symbolism really easily in a way that kind of bypasses our conscious mind. And so if you set an intention that also involves things that you can touch and smell and feel, and beautiful images and stuff that help you to hold on to that intention, to just know that you end here and other people's stuff is out there, that can be really helpful. And so, like I say, I'd come across this stuff in witchy kind of woo-woo spaces about protection and shielding and stuff, and I had done a little bit of it, but I'd never really taken it very seriously in terms of my everyday life, or really got into it in a big way. And I don't want to talk shit on anyone who does, because fair enough, but I just didn't. I was like, I'm not messing with spirits. I don't think spirits are going to come and attack me, and I don't think I'm pissing off any witches because I'm just doing some stuff quietly in my own home, so I don't think witches are going to put the evil eye on me or whatever, like, what am I protecting against so much? But then when Kellyanne was talking about it, I was like, of course, I'm protecting against other people's emotional shit from getting into me, which happens to be every fucking time I leave the house. So, you could use it for that. And, it's so simple and so dumb that I didn't make that connection myself. But yeah, thank you, Kellyanne, for stating the fucking obvious, and I'm going to try a lot harder to do that from now on. And I think she's great in that she says, find your own way. Like, there's so many different ways to do it. Go out and try different ways, and find what works for you. If you're looking for somewhere to start for like kind of this witchy stuff, if you're like never been there before and you're sort of intrigued, I'm going to link below Mintfaery's one that she did on how to protect yourself from your crazy relatives during the holidays. Mintfaery is adorable. Like, I just want to share something of hers anyway, but this is a really good little introduction to like all of these different approaches that you could take. And of course she's talking about relatives, but this stuff applies to your crazy collective as well, or your collective, or your workplace, or your whatever, of people that you love, but also bring all their stuff, So yeah, check that out if you want a kind of a in way to this stuff. I've been trying really harder to just practice this stuff more and work out what works for me, and I find that it does help a lot to really deliberately set a space around myself that is just for me, and to know that I don't have to take on other people's things. I'll also put a link below if you're not so woo-woo and you just want some practical information for empaths. I'll put a link below from a woman called Lola Pickett, just some tips about sort of more practical things that you can do to just survive the experience of being around intense emotional stuff. Again, she's talking about family, but it applies anywhere. As an empath. But yeah, the more I sort of explore the stuff, the more that I notice it happening, So like, recently I was at I do a Māori language night class, and, we go around the classroom, each taking turns speaking the phrase that we were learning. And it was coming around to me, and I was feeling really, really nervous. And I was like, why am I so nervous? I know this phrase. I'm comfortable with this phrase. And believe me, I'm often really nervous just on my own behalf. But on that time, I was like, what's going on here? And then I realised that it was actually this woman next to me who was really, really nervous. And it wasn't coming from me at all. And once I realised that it was her and not me, I could just settle a lot more. And so... like I say, some of this road of exploration is not about kind of working out 100% straight away how to protect yourself from other people's stuff. There's just a period, I think, of observing how you are in the world, noticing how the stuff impacts you, and just noticing itself goes a long way to lessening those effects. And it's also just a first sort of step, I think, to working out how you can be more empowered in that space. In terms of, like Kellyanne was saying, who have gone from being people who are finding it overwhelming to people who are really empowered by it and use it as their superpower and feel really in their strength with it. I'm not there, but I would love to hear from people who are further down that road as well and are applying this stuff in their activism and really have stuff to share. I think I could learn a lot from that, and other people watching this could learn a lot from that as well. What else did I want to say? That observation thing also is just, and just again, does this resonate with anybody else, that the thing of shielding is kind of like, in many ways, I think the symbolic opposite of, or a sort of a reminder to not have, I feel like my nervous system is kind of out here, like these little tendrils or antennas that are just kind of feeling around the room, and sometimes even bigger than, if I know that awful things are happening in the world, which they are all the time, like feeling out into those other things. And they're, like, it sounds, I know that this will sound crazy to people who don't experience this, but this is something I experience. I know that other people do as well. Just this kind of sense of out here, and it takes real discipline for me to actually bring those antennae in, or those tendrils in, and just get them, just get my kind of emotional energy to just be with me and my, my body and where it ends and where I am. That's a real discipline in itself. So again, I think that it's connected, but it's a slightly different thing. But this thing of shielding and practicing, just bringing yourself back to yourself, bringing yourself back to your breath and what your authentic emotional reactions are, is interesting and hard work. But again, like so freeing of not carrying other people's things, and and kind of, like I say, this is not something that I feel like I have mastery over, but kind of interesting to think about it, how you do use this as a superpower, and how once you know where you are and where somebody else is, that if you can detect, that they are feeling shame or competition, and that shame or competition isn't actually coming from you, that it's coming from them, that you can that you can identify that and leave it with them, and also maybe I don't know, work out how to interact with them within that knowledge that they may be feeling those things. Yeah, not in a creepy power over way, but just in a empowered way. Yeah, so I think that, God, there's probably all kinds of other things I could say about this, but I'm just going to leave it there. And yeah, it feels kind of funny and vulnerable outing myself as having this woo-woo spiritual side, because a lot of people who I'm friends with and know me in activist spaces don't know me in this way, but you know, I want this channel to be kind of an integrating project for me where all of my parts of me are here. So here is this part. And I will leave you with that, and just that real reminder, you know, whether you are, wherever you are at with this stuff, that you're entitled to keep your energy for you and let other people have their energy for them. You don't have to carry other people's stuff. Yeah, you can. Often we are distracting ourselves from our own stuff actually by carrying other people's stuff. So that's the kind of other challenge as well with this. But there's a freedom in that as well, to just let other people, just put other people's stuff down and just work with this, what's here. So yeah, with that, take care. Thanks for joining me again. And if you found this useful and you think other people might as well, please share it. I feel like at the moment it might just be people that I'm friends with on Facebook who are watching this channel. So I think that other people could find it useful as well. So if there are spaces that you think this could be useful in, please share it. And take care. Ka kite. Noho ora mai.